So basically, this video is being edited 2 weeks after I filmed it because I moved this week, and luckily in the UK we're actually getting season 2 of His Dark Materials a week earlier than we anticipated, on the 8th, which is this Sunday when you're watching this, hopefully, fingers crossed. And so I thought it was perfect timing to learn a little bit more, talk a little bit more about Demons and Dust and what that means and what that can mean for us. And yeah, and if you can see... Hello, so my name is Ashley. This is Ashley Faith. You can also call me a Harvard if you want, that's my Hebrew name. And I am a huge fan of His Dark Materials. A huge fan. And I've been thinking a lot about it recently with the trailers that we have for the second season of the TV show, and also the release of Serpentine, which I read a few days ago, maybe a week ago. And I've been thinking, I've also read this book, which is a book that is a variety of essays that discuss His Dark Materials and what they can tell us about philosophical thought. So notions of truth and growing up and death and all those nice philosophical thoughts. And therefore I'd had this mulling around in my brain a lot, and I wanted to put my 2 cents into this conversation. So I thought that I could discuss this from the point of view of Dust and Demons, because they both reflect things that I think are vital for us as people to discuss. And obviously everyone doesn't have to discuss them in the context of His Dark Materials, but the book series and the TV series, not so much the film, but the book series and the TV series do give us a lot of scope and a lot of metaphor even, or allegory, to discuss them with, which I think is very helpful when you're talking about these matters, because they can get a little bit out there and also a little bit, they can feel a little bit uncontrollable. So we're going to talk about Dust first because it's a little bit simpler. But Dust, and what Dust is in the Philip Pullman universe, is something that encapsulates the main theme of the story. And the main theme of the story, spoiler warning now for the rest of this video, because I will be discussing things that you could consider to be a spoiler. So the main theme in this story is growing up, and the fact that growing up is a good thing, and growing up is important and it's special, and growing up isn't a bad thing, growing up isn't something to be feared, and growing up isn't something to try and stop. That growing up is important, and growing up is good personally and just good, you know, for everybody. And this directly contrasts Narnia and the theme that underpins Narnia that Philip Pullman doesn't like. He really doesn't like it. He sees Narnia as a pseudo Bible, basically, of propaganda that growing up isn't good and that growing up is sinful, and that when you grow up you can't be in Narnia anymore, you can't go to heaven when you're grown up. And this is shown very clearly with the fact that Susan isn't allowed back into Narnia because she's grown up, because she likes boys and she likes lipstick. So she is now not pure enough, not good enough to come to Narnia, and that is one of the biggest criticisms of the series that Philip Pullman has, and that he tried to oppose with his series His Dark Materials. And that is the main theme, and Dust is that in essence, is growing up. Dust settles on adult humans more so than children humans, and it happens at the age of maturity, at puberty, when your demon settles, as we'll get onto a bit later on. As your demon settles, Dust settles on you more, and you have knowledge, and you are older, you have more life experience, you're not a child anymore. And the two things, the garnering of Dust in a more present way, and your demon settling, i.e. you coming to understand who you are and what you want when you grow up, when you are a teenager going through puberty, that this shows us that growing up is just what happens and it's not a bad thing. In fact, it can be a positive thing. But this, you know, leads on nicely to the fact that a lot of the characters in the series, Mrs. Coulter and the Magisterium, do think that dust is the root of all evil, that dust is original sin, and without sin, you don't get dust to settle on you, and if dust doesn't settle on you, you don't have sin, you know, vice versa. And the belief is in that world that when Eve ate the apple, her demons settled and dust started to settle on her. So she made the first sin by eating the apple and cursed every human after her to have that, to have sin live on them from maturity. And Philip Pullman shows us throughout the series that dust is not a bad thing. Dust is just the presence of human consciousness and being an adult and human experience. And you can see this as dust settles on objects that humans have touched. And this started 30,000 years ago, which is when people assume that people began to have the same types of thoughts as we know to be like human consciousness now. And there is another link between the real world and Philip's world, where he uses our history and our scientific knowledge and how the world is now to inform the universe, because theoretically our world could exist in the worlds that make up Philip's universe. And so that is what dust is. Dust is really just the essence of growing up, the essence of human development and consciousness. And it's not a bad thing, it's just a thing that happens, and there is no need to be afraid of it or scared of it or try to stop it or anything like that, because dust is a good thing about the world. And by the end of the series, that is what you figure out, that is what Lyra decides. And there's an interesting quote in the first book at the end, where Pan and Lyra are discussing what they should do after Azrael has gone through his rift and after she has the moment with Roger. And Pan says, what if dust isn't bad? We only thought it was bad because the adults we were with told us it was bad, but what if it's good? And what if it needs to be protected? And that is in essence what this story is about. It's about protecting dust. It's about protecting the need and human experience and the freedom of thought and the freedom to be who you are. And it's a pretty deep, it's pretty deep. And so then we go on to demons. Demons are in essence a physical manifestation of who you are and who you have grown up to be. And your demon settling is also like a sort of consolidation of that. And as we know, demons are our soul outside of our body in a physical form. Now, I would like to think that my demon is a flamingo. Who knows, right? But I'd like to think my demon is a flamingo. However, there comes a point when Philip's writing and what the demon shows us and the different relationships that his characters have with their demons shows us and mirrors a lot of things that people in our world or people in Will's world deal with internally, that we don't have another person to talk these things through with. It's not a two-sided conversation in our world. It's a one-sided conversation because our demons are inside us, and so we can't talk to them. We can't discuss with them what we should do in certain situation. We discuss that with ourselves. We talk about it internally in our brain. And I think there's a mention of this in the series. I could be wrong, but it might be Will or Will's father, one of them anyway, talks about how the conversation that one would have with a demon in Lyra's world, in Will's world, is just one of those conversations that you have with yourself in your brain where you're deciding about what to do or you're discussing something, how something went or whatever, and there's two different thought patterns in your brain. And that is what our demon is. We don't have the physical form of the demon, but we still have the demon. And further to that, when we look at things that happen to characters and their demons and the resulting relationships that human and demon have, it is something very interesting to discuss, and it's very evident from the end of the story. I am going to be I have warned you about spoilers, but I'm going to warn you again. Spoilers for the series. But Lyra and Will, they have to leave their demons at the edge of the world of the dead to go there, and this causes something known as separation. It's not something that is widely spoken about. It's almost a taboo to speak about demon separation, but it does happen to a lot of people, and as Lyra is discovering is in the second book of Dust, and also slightly in Serpentine, that a lot of people can separate from their demon, and it's not as common, as rare, or as special as she thought it was. And a lot of people have this tumultuous relationship with their demon that she now has with Pan, and she discovers that it's a lot more prevalent, and I think there is some sort of allegory with self-esteem issues and, more seriously, different sorts of mental health issues. Now obviously it's not a direct discussion of mental health, but I think it sort of reflects the taboo that talking about mental health has in our world, especially when the book series was first written in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, that mental health wasn't discussed. People didn't openly talk about the struggles they were having within themselves, and it was a taboo subject to talk about how you were struggling, how you and yourself and the way that you see yourself was damaging to you. But in Lyra's world, that relationship could be sort of reflected in a demon, in a relationship that a person would have with their demon. And I think it's rather interesting to think about it in this way, that Lyra thinks that she is the only person who has gone through this. Lyra thinks that her and Pan, and also the witches, side note, but only her and Pan and the witches are the ones who have struggles with this specifically. I think it's rather interesting to think about, and Lyra's separation and Will's separation and other people's separations throughout the series, Malcolm and the witches and lots of other people that Lyra comes across in the Book of Dust. It tells a story, and it shines a light on something in our world that maybe Philip meant to do, or maybe he didn't. And I don't think that really matters whether he meant to do it or not. But what we have now in this story is an allegory for the taboo of talking about mental health, and how important it is for people to talk about it, and how Lyra's discovery of other people in the same situation as her as Pan, other people who have separated from their demons and their demons have turned against them, it creates this beautiful allegory that we should be talking about the struggles that we have internally with ourselves, if that makes sense. And that when Lyra finds out that she's not the only one who suffers, and that other people are suffering with this too, it opens her eyes to the fact that she isn't alone, and lots of people go through this. And I think it really, really, it shines a light on how we as people need to be kinder to ourselves and to the people. And I just think that the whole series is just rather clever. And to discuss a little bit my thoughts around Serpentine, I am going to read to you my review, because I made this kind of profound, in my own opinion, discussion on the book. What a lovely little episode of Lyra and Pantalaimmon's relationship. Olivia Colman as the narrator of this was excellent. It's a wonderful short story that gives a little insight as to the journey that Pan and Lyra have been on since we saw them last in Oxford with all those birds and a witch, and before the start of her journey east. It may help tide me over until we get to the last instalment of the Book in Dust. Until then, I'll savour even the shortest visit to Lyra's world. I think there's a metaphor buried in there somewhere about our relation with ourselves, our soul, or our demon as it were. Some people are discontented with themselves in some way. I think many of us are to a certain extent. It happens when we grow up and we learn what our place is in the world, and maybe how we don't quite fit that place. It's important that we are kind to ourselves and we allow parts of ourselves to forgive other parts of ourselves. Lyra and Pan demonstrate that perfectly in this story. The way that Philip Pullman writes these stories about the intimacies of the human spirit is quite remarkable, and I think I'll always feel a deep connection to Lyra and her world, for she and her demon have taught me lessons about who I am and who I want to be. Whoa, they got pretty deep, didn't it? So, as I perfectly summed up in that review, I was quite proud of it, to be quite honest. Lyra and Pantalaimmon's relationship and how they are learning to forgive themselves and forgive the hurt caused to them by one another. It shows us a thing or two about how we need to forgive ourselves for things we have done negatively to ourselves. And that if we hold that negativity and that pain and that turmoil, then it will affect our relationship with ourselves going forward, and it will affect our lives negatively if we carry on with that. Now, I think this video got a little deep and maybe a little bit rambly, but I had this on the top of my head and I really wanted to discuss it, so that is what you got. That is the end of the video. If you have any thoughts on this, do let me know. I am not sure when this video is going to come out. Basically, I am in the process of moving in with my boyfriend. We have been long distance for almost 5 years now, and we finally get to move in together, and I'm so excited, but I am so unbelievably stressed as well. So I'm not sure when this video will come out because I have a very busy week ahead of me, including the move and all the packing and university and just so much stuff. So I'm not sure when this video will come out, but do check out any of my other videos on the topic of his dark materials. All of my videos about the trailers for the new season. I am tremendously excited for that. We have maybe three and a half weeks until we get that, so it's very exciting. I'm very excited, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Please subscribe if you like this content, and if you have anything to say about any of the things I've discussed, please leave a comment down there and we can discuss. If you want to follow my His Dark Materials fan account, Ashley Has Faith in Lee Scoresby, please do. And that's everything. Thanks for being faithful, and thanks for watching. Mwah.